People who dated an adult film star. What was it like? Story 1. Back in the mid-90s, I had a job at an upscale strip club. They regularly hosted feature acts, most of whom were active performers in adult films. One weekend, I was tasked with being the handler for one of these performers. My job was to pick her up from the airport, drive her to her hotel or wherever she wanted, get her to the club, etc. This particular woman was at the height of her popularity, with numerous movies and a big name in the industry. I picked her up Thursday evening. She was exhausted and wanted a sit-down dinner, so I made a few recommendations, and she picked one. She mentioned that she hated eating alone in strange places, so I joined her. Feeling awkward and not wanting to sound like a creepy fan, I tried to ask her about anything except her job. I did ask her about a couple of other stars when she opened the conversation to that topic. When I dropped her off at her hotel, I walked her to her door. She seemed to expect me to try to come up with an excuse to come in, but I just wished her good night and told her to call me when she wanted me to pick her up. Now, to my surprise, she called me in the morning because she wanted to go shopping. So I took her shopping. Then she asked if I had a gym membership somewhere because the hotel gym was disappointing. I told her she could be my guest. I asked if she was okay with stopping by my apartment so I could get workout clothes, and she was fine with it. It was surreal having this adult film superstar in my apartment, commenting on my fake Patrick Nagel and Bev Doolittle prints, posters in decent frames. She said I was possibly the only white guy in America under 35 who didn't have a Scarface poster framed like it was the Mona Lisa. We went to the gym and then I took her back to her room where she made it clear she wanted me to come in. We ended up in the shower together, fooling around until she decided she wanted dinner before going to the club. She was a hit, obviously. After I drove her back, she asked me to spend the night. She looked almost sad when she said, "Please don't try to be like we're making a movie." She called it romance novel intimacy. She preferred dim light or candlelight and sticking to face-to-face positions with lots of kissing. We ended up spending every moment she wasn't on stage together, acting like a real couple. We exchanged emails. This was the mid-90s, no cell phones, and maintained a long-distance relationship for over a year. Every chance she got, she came out to my city and got to be my girlfriend instead of everybody else's girlfriend. The industry really wrecked her mental health and self-esteem in the early years, and the way she acted with me, it felt like I might be one of the only guys who didn't see the adult film star. She loved that I asked about her job like it was a regular job. She loved telling me about drama and gossip. She let me hold her while she sobbed about being assaulted by a male performer at some industry event. Eventually, the romantic relationship became too difficult to maintain, and the communication slowed. We would email, just much less frequently. She got married to a guy she is still with. I did get a pretty emotional phone call out of the blue when I emailed her and told her I was deploying to Afghanistan. A couple of friends of hers with the FDNY had died on 9/11s, and she was having an absolute meltdown. Her husband actually took the phone from her and apologized to me, but I assured him it was okay, and that I would happily check in frequently to let them both know I was okay. Eventually, all communication just fizzled out. I wonder if she even remembers our little whirlwind. Story 2. When I was 19, I dated a girl who was wild and completely opposite of me. She taught me a lot about not caring too much and was a poster child for social bravery. She always said I was the nicest person she had ever been with. However, she had a rough life. Her dad was a Scientologist, and she would tell me about the men in the church who would pass her around as a kid. This is the reason I get hostile when Scientologists try to talk to me on the street. One night, we were being intimate. The room was dark, my hands on her hips, when I felt a sudden hot, stinging feeling on my chest. The light switch was right above me, so I turned it on. This intense woman had pulled out a razor blade and cut me while riding me. I told her to stop, but we kept going. She did it again. Her taste for extremes was her downfall. She eventually left me for her abusive ex. He put her in the hospital soon after, got her on heroin, forced her into adult films, and she had a career for a few years where she was one of the up-and-comers to watch. We kept in contact, but it was mostly whenever she was down on her luck and needed to talk. She got out of the industry, got clean, had a kid, but a year later, she relapsed and died. We only dated for a summer, but the impact she had on me, a socially awkward, anxiety-filled kid, is something I think about almost every day. I always think about her child and hope she only got the best of her mom. Story 3. Many years ago, probably around 2007 to 2008, I started dating a stripper while I was in college. I learned that until very recently, she had lived in California in a place she called Porn Valley. If I'm remembering correctly, it was San Fernando. She did adult films there for a while right after high school, made a respectable amount of money, and then moved to the East Coast to go to college. Dating her was a wild experience. I constantly felt like I was on the verge of being replaced. She did whatever she wanted whenever the whim struck her, and I could tell she was always probing me for insecurity, which I simply didn't have. Despite all that, she wasn't demanding at all. She paid for everything, and would get mildly annoyed if I snuck a check or paid for something behind her back. The intimacy wasn't good. She had zero desire to please anyone but herself, but would get irritated if I finished and couldn't continue, even though she never continued after she got hers. She was incredibly conceited and would basically only talk about herself. One day, she didn't show up at the coffee shop where we were supposed to meet to study, and her phone was off. Cell phones were relatively new, and people treated them differently, so I wasn't worried. I went to her apartment, and when she answered the door and saw me, she just said, "Oh, sorry, I'm seeing someone else." When I asked for details, she just shrugged her shoulders and said she needed to go. I later saw her walking with some ultra beefcake guy, and for the next year or so, I would often see her upgrade to another dude. We had one class together a semester later, and she legitimately might have forgotten my name. I'm really glad I wasn't emotionally invested in that relationship. Story 4. I dated a guy in 2001 who went on to do adult movies. He's a little skinny guy with a huge sausage. Nice guy, good in bed, super smart. Way too much of a pothead and too personally irresponsible with things like money and cleaning up after himself for me to settle down with. Story 5. A good friend of mine married a very small-time adult video star. She was mostly a strip club headliner type, but she did some solo movies. She's awesome. Basically, they had an outstanding relationship and happy kids, and everything was really good. He died young, unfortunately. And now she is doing the widow thing, which is hard. But it's exactly like it would be with anyone else. Save that. She has a pretty good number of people from the industry as a support structure. Story 6. Dated an OnlyFans model back in the early days of pandemic. Worst decision ever, to be honest, and on top of that, the bedtime fun wasn't exactly that great either. Someone replied, "I hate to say it, but at least in my experience, the prettiest people I've dated or been with have all been starfishes. The only attractive people I've been with that were fun in the bedroom were some of the craziest, like bipolar." Story 7. I met and casually dated a rather successful OnlyFans girl for a while after meeting on a dating app. A couple of months in, I found out that she did UF and made a staggering amount of money from it. I became suspicious when she bought 2 PS5s in one day for each household, treating it like no big deal. We had a ton of fun together. She was very down to earth, recently divorced, and the intimacy was great. I only asked a little about her work, and she showed me a bit of it. Mostly nudes and solo stuff, some content with her ex-husband. Nothing too wild. She showed me the thousands of DMs she was getting, and I believed her when she said she never took it past DMs. It became a little thing for us that all these guys were dying for her attention, yet here I was, getting to be with her. We talked a tiny bit about making content together, but I never felt fully comfortable doing it. I have a lot of identifying tattoos, and I didn't want our time together to feel like work or involve money changing hands. Life got a little busy for both of us, and we eventually stopped seeing each other. Story 8. There were days and sometimes weeks where she wouldn't have any work, and those times were pure fun. And then days where she would be on a project and I'd be alone. It works if you have an open mind, otherwise it's a disaster. I got jealous after a few months into it and saw that I can't make it work. Story 9. Dated an F-girl. Truly is what they say. Narcissism to the extreme. If I wasn't okay, stressed, or unhappy, she gave absolute zero regards and was more concerned about how she felt. Don't do it except for the fun of it. Story 10. Back between 2021 to 2022, I dated a 52-year-old half-Japanese, half-Hispanic former bikini model raver. No, seriously, she's an EDM addict to this day, who worked in the industry for about a year back in the 90s. She was as physically vain and physically spectacular as you'd guess. But dang, if she wasn't one of the most fun, energetic, nicest people I've ever been with. She had a few unfortunate missteps in life, but was always motivated to be better, especially for her grandson. If you're ever in Vegas and see a short woman with double D honkers and hot pink hair and a ton of Hello Kitty apparel, well, that means you're in Vegas. But it also means you've seen who I'm referring to. Story 11. I worked in the business in the 80s and 90s behind the camera. I dated several of the girls in the business at that time, though rarely anything seriously. Some of them were just really fun to hang out with. One day, I was on a shoot and was filming this incredibly good-looking woman having bedtime fun. We wound up talking for like 2 hours while we were waiting around for another girl to show up. I asked if she wanted to get dinner. We did. Long story short, we're still married today. So yeah, I get to say the first time I ever met my wife was filming her making love with another guy. Go figure. Story 12. I dated a girl in high school who became an adult star later on in life. She was beautiful but broken. Our relationship lasted for several years and we were engaged to be engaged. I loved her a lot, but in my youth foolishly thought I could fix her. She cheated on me several times. Eventually, it became too much and I broke it off for good. I still carry a scar for her, and when I saw her doing adult films years later, it was about 5% disgust, 95% sadness. Oddly, I still wish I could help her, but we haven't spoken in decades, and I know better now. I'm married with kids and have never been happier. I do wish her well, though. She was my first true love, and I hope she finds what she's looking for, even though I know she probably won't. Story 13. Never dated one, but was friends with one. Dang, if she wasn't one of the nicest and caring people. Would sometimes online chat with her between sessions. Wrote some books and went on a book tour for one of them. My buddy dated a stripper, and she was the total opposite. A real mess. Was as crazy as you'd expect and neglected her daughter. I felt bad for the kid and would play a bit with her when they would come over to where we were hanging. You could tell she was starving for attention, especially father figure type attention. I felt bad when the stripper and my buddy broke up. The kid cried the most. Story 14. Dated a cam girl. I knew I was being used for my money, but I was having bedtime fun, so I was cool with it. She broke up with me because she found someone richer. Story 15. Dated a girl in the industry for a few months. She was really short, 5 at most. About 2 months into our relationship, she got a tattoo of my initials on her arm. I was a bit weirded out by that. A few weeks later, she ghosted me. A month after that, she asked if I wanted to come over to her place. And after that, we didn't talk again. It was a roller coaster ride of a relationship. The bedtime fun wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. That concludes today's story time. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.